Hello guys, you asked me if I could do a collaboration tutorial with Grant Abbitt. Well, I wrote an email to him and his response was, let's do it. We are going to create a medieval shield. I will do the modeling process and Grant will do the texture painting. Here you can see his channel with amazing Blender videos, especially about texture painting or sculpting with Blender. It's just awesome. Be sure to check it out, and now let's get started with modeling a game asset, a medieval shield. I started Blender 2.8 and now I'm going to create the base mesh, so I add a cylinder. I decrease the radius and the depth. I don't care too much now for the real physical dimensions. I'm just looking for correct proportions for the mesh. I think that's alright for the start. Then I go to edit mode and to face selection, and then I double click on this outer ring, and as you can see all the faces get selected, and then I select the tool extrude along normals. And with this selected I can press the left mouse button down and drag the mouse, and as you can see I can add more rings to the mesh. I extrude them. And with this technique I create the very base mesh for the shield. Okay, the next step is to remove this inner part. We can remove it because we are going to replace it with a kind of sphere later on. So I can go to face selection and remove these faces. Okay, the next step is to select the outer rings at the top and the bottom, because I also want to extrude these to increase the thickness of these parts, again by using the tool extrude along normals. Okay, pretty nice. Now I want to add a bevel for the edges, so I go to edge selection mode and I select the edges by double clicking them, and I hold the shift key down so that I can select multiple edges, and then I press Ctrl and B, and then I move the mouse carefully to add small bevels. Alright, now let's create this part in the middle. This kind of metal sphere that you know from medieval shields. I select this inner edge, then I press E followed by the Enter key and then S and scale it towards the center. With this inner edge selected, I press E again followed by Z to move it along the Z axis, and then I can press S to scale it again, and with this I can create step by step a spherical shape in the middle. In the end I press S and then the 0 key, so that all the vertices of this circle are moved to the center. After that I add another edge loop by pressing the Ctrl and the R key, and I bring it close to this edge. Okay, now I want to select the faces in the middle, so I press the C key to turn to circle selection, but I have to enable face selection as well. When I move the mouse wheel I can increase the size of the circle, and then with one click I can select all these faces. Okay, now I press G and Z to move this selection a bit upwards. And now I go to object mode and you can see this looks pretty nice. And after that I will create the same part at the back side, but inverted. This means I will use the same technique to create a shape like this, but this time I will extrude it to the inside of the mesh. Again I add these edge loops. Then I double click the inner edge to select it and use again extrude and scale to create this kind of sphere that points to the inside. For the last edge loop I press again S and 0, so that the vertices of this edge loop come together at the center. Like I did for the outer side, I want to bring these faces a bit upwards, So I select these faces here in face selection mode with the circle selection tool, and then I press G followed by Z to move these faces upwards. Very nice so far. Now we have to do an optimization for the mesh because we brought the vertices of the rings together at the center. This means they are now duplicates. So I choose merge by distance with all the vertices selected. And with this we removed 62 vertices by merging. Okay, the next step is to create kind of metal clamps, or I don't know the word. You will see what I mean when we are going to create it. I start by selecting these faces here. And my goal is to duplicate them and create a separate mesh starting from this selection. Okay, so I press Shift and D to duplicate these faces, and then I press the S key and move the mouse to increase the scale of the selection. Okay, looks good. Now I want to get rid of some edges, so I go to Edge Selection mode, select this edge and press Ctrl and X to dissolve the selected edge. The same for this one on the other side. And that's a good start for this mesh. Then I select this edge and also the one on the other side, and I want to bring these a bit more to the outside. And in the transform orientations I choose normal so that I can move these edges along the normals to the outside by using the move tool. Okay, now the part is a bit smaller, then I press Ctrl and R to add an edge loop in the middle, and then I can select these outer vertices and also move them along the normals to the outside. And this is the shape that I was going for a kind of base mesh for this part. And now I go ahead and select this part and separate it. Okay, this means I'm going to create a separate object from this part. So I hover with the mouse cursor over it and press the L key, so it is selected. And then I press the P key to separate it. Now you can remember the shortcut, and I go ahead, select it, and I add a solidify modifier to increase the thickness of the object. I select the modifier tab, press add modifier, choose solidify, increase the thickness a bit, and here we go. Alright, that's already quite nice. We have some small overlappings in the topology, so I select these faces and bring them a bit to the outside. That's better. And after that I go to edge selection, select these edges, bring them a bit to the outside, these ones as well. And now we have a nice and clean topology. Alright, I'm quite happy with this. Perhaps increase the scale along the Z axis. So I press the S key and Z to scale it. That looks good, and now I move it a tiny bit more to the center. Yes, I think we can go with that. Okay, one of these clamp objects is created. I apply the solidify modifier, and here you can see the resulting mesh. Pretty good. And the next thing that I would like to do is to add a kind of simplified bolt or screw to this object. It will be a low poly model, so we don't have to add many details. First I select this vertex and then I snap the 3D cursor to this position. And when I add an object now, for example a cylinder, it will be added at this location. The number of vertices are set to 5 and also decrease the radius and the depth. For the caps I use a triangle fan, and then I move the whole mesh upwards because I want to remove the faces at the bottom. I do this because we don't see these faces when we move again this bolt mesh into the shield. And we want to use for this low poly mesh as few polygons as possible. So I select this vertex, remove it, and the faces will be removed as well, and then I move again the mesh into the shield. Okay, the bolt object is a part of the clamp object because we created this in edit mode. It is not a separate object, this is what I wanted. But I will rotate and move it a bit and adjust it, align it to the underlying mesh. And after that comes a tricky part. I want to duplicate the mesh 3 times and rotate it around the center of the shield. There are many ways to do this. Let me show you a simple solution. I selected the mesh in edit mode. Then I set the pivot point to 3D cursor. Okay, and then I press Shift and C to set the cursor to the center. After that I switch to the rotate tool, and as you can see, using the gizmo I can rotate the mesh around the center and around the Z-axis. The only thing I have to do now is to press Shift and D and then rotate it, and I will rotate the duplicated mesh around the center of the shield. I do this now 2 more times. First select the mesh, then duplicate and rotate it. And in the end you get this result. I could use the spin tool for this as well, but I like it to do this way because it doesn't produce a perfect symmetry. And it could be that a perfect symmetry makes your model look a bit more unnatural. So as I used to say, imperfection can be a key. Okay, now I'm going to add some small decorations to the ring of the inner object. So I click here to set the 3D cursor and add again a cylinder. This time I will use just 4 vertices. And again I will remove the faces at the bottom. So I select the move tool and move the mesh upwards. And then I delete this vertex. Okay, after that I move this vertex upwards along the Z-axis. That's a bit unusual because we set the transform pivot point to the 3D cursor, but it works anyway. And then I move the whole mesh again into the ring of the shield. Okay, I press S to scale it a bit, and then I use again the technique to duplicate the mesh, snap the view and then press the G key to move the duplicated meshes to different locations on the ring. After that I rotate each mesh individually around the Z-axis so that you have the impression that this is a natural object that is not too symmetrical, just to add some imperfections. Okay, I do this now for all these meshes. That's not too exciting, so I speed this up a bit. Alright, and now we can go ahead and select all the separate objects. Because I want to join them to one object, press Ctrl and J after you selected them, and then you have one object that you can call, for example, shield. Okay, great, but a shield is a bit bent. So I go to edit mode and select this vertex in the center, and then I enable proportional editing, which is this button here in the toolbar. Then I press G followed by Z, and you can increase or decrease the radius, the impact of the proportional editing on the mesh when you move the mouse wheel. And when you move the mouse now, you can make your shield look like this. You added this kind of curve or roundness. Looks pretty good actually. And I think the main part is completed. Okay, what I also want to create is a kind of handle for the shield. So I move this here to the left side so that we have a bit more space for creating this here at the center. And I start again with a cylinder. For this one I will use 9 vertices. And I go again to edit mode, but have to disable the proportional editing. Then I move it to the left side, press Ctrl to enable snapping to the grid, and then I have to remove the faces at the bottom and the top. Okay, now I press the E key followed by the Enter key, then I press S to scale it to the inside. And now we can extrude the handle by pressing the E key. The view is snapped to front orthographic, and I can always press the R key to rotate the last extruded edge loop. I don't have a reference for this handle, it's a bit experimental. You can always select these edge loops by double clicking them, and then you press the S or the R key to scale or rotate. Be sure to have an orthographic view and the view snapped to the front so that you don't add any distortions to your mesh. As I said, it's a bit experimental, but it's fun and I recommend to do this. And this is a shape, a mesh that I like, so I go ahead and add a mirror modifier to it. Then I go to edit mode, enable the X-ray so that we can select the whole mesh, also at the backside. Then I press G followed by X and enable clipping for the mirror modifier so that the mesh is merged at the center. Alright, now I move around some vertices and edge loops till I'm happy with the shape of the handle. Okay, that's a nice handle that I want to go with. Now I can bring the shield again to the center. You can just select it and then press Alt and G. After that I select the handle object and scale it till it fits the size of the shield. Then I press R, X and type in 180 to rotate the object 180 degrees around the X-axis, and then I move it again into the object. Okay, I increase the size a little bit more, like that. And then I go again to X-ray and select this part to rotate it so that it matches the orientation of the shield. Alright, now I'm happy with it and I can apply the mirror modifier. In the end, I join the two objects, so I select them and press the keys Ctrl and J, and the modeling process is finished. I sent this over to Grant Abbitt and he did the UV unwrapping and texture painting. I added the link to his video to the description below and to the end screen of this video as well. Okay guys, thanks for watching. I hope you liked this collaboration tutorial. If you do, then don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also to the channel of Grant Abbitt. If you have any questions, add these to the comments and I see you on Jayanam.